I think I'll begin because we've got so much time and we've already gone a little bit in. Good to see everybody here. I'm Johnnie Wilson. I've been working with UC Santa Cruz, and I'm going to share with you something I've been doing with partners in practice. A number of folks from our community have been joining me for weekly sessions over the last couple years. So here's my email address if anybody wants to connect with me. Um, First thing I want you to do is introduce yourself in the chat. Share what university you represent and what position you hold, and a non-teaching enjoyment this summer. So one of the things I did this summer is I took a couple of classes, and I studied art long ago and enjoy that very much. So that was my non-teaching enjoyment this summer. So if you could all share something in chat that way, that would be a good start for us. So just saying who you are and where you're coming from, and then something that's non-teaching. Be good to see the breadth of our community too. In this work that I did over the last couple of years, I got to work with folks from different university campuses across the state. It's good to see folks from across the state. If you could just share what school, what you do, getting back to running, working, being with family. Somebody went on a safari this summer. Michelle, that must have been grand. Somebody went to the UK as well. I'm going to start sharing the presentation now. Um, this is what we'll be thinking about today. We're going to think about what matters to our supervision practice and how we learn from each other as teacher mentors. So we are a community. We're an odd community because we're kind of separate in different institutions, and there's no known shared practice set out there in the way that there would be for teaching or for some other occupations. But supervision has things that we do. And one of the things I did working with Lisa was to organize a supervisor PLC over the last 2 years. So we met every other week on Fridays for like an hour or so. And we had participants from across the state, CSUs and UCs, which was really great because we each know our own supervision in the spaces in which we work. It was good to see and understand how our work looks different in different contexts. One of the special things about our PLC is the topics for inquiry were generated by the participants. So every week I'd send out a note to the people who were involved and say, what do we want to talk about? And usually we choose one thing and we focus on that for the talk. And sometimes it would go to other places, but we always worked from the interests that we generated from our own practice. So one special thing is I want to thank all the peers who took part. And any of you who are in this group right now, if you want to nominate yourself, raise your hand, say something about the experience and what its worth was to you, that would be wonderful. There's one place in which I might ask for your help in that regard too. So I'm going to give you some examples. Here's an example of one kind of talk we had. This is from this last spring. Somebody wanted to talk about TPE 6, and this is about professional development. And these notes are, we took ongoing notes, and we usually named the folks that had things to say. Um, and this was, Chris from UCI talked about focusing on student agency, the conversations to have. What do we do when we see the instruction is problematic? What they see when the instruction is problematic. So I want you to hold on to as I go through the things today. You're going to hear many, many things that are going to ring true for you. You've had that experience with a beginning teacher. What is it? What was your experience with that? And how would you talk about that with a peer to make better sense of it? So this is what we were doing. So your student teacher comes to you and they're teaching math or something, and your program has all these wonderful ideas about how math should be taught, but their experience in placement is quite different and is problematic in some way. You're the supervisor. What kind of conversation do you have with them about that? Okay. And so in our discussion here, students advocating for themselves in those sticky spots, um, and have to think about where the teacher's move co is coming from. If they're seeing their mentor teacher doing something in a particular way, is it really the mentor teacher? Is it some kind of school-wide requirement, a district policy? What latitude do teachers, the mentor teachers, have in the ways they might teach? And so we need to think about that in regards to what the student teachers might be observing. And then also thinking about the other spaces where decisions about instruction happen, what happens within a
Yes.
grade level and those kinds of places. Um, and you can see being careful. What would you do? What can you do? These are things we might say to a beginning teacher.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Sorry, I just somehow got muted. Can you hear me all right now?
Sorry, that was my mistake. I'm trying to,
Okay,
there's one
okay.
participant who needs to be muted. I
I hope
believe
it's
I
not
just
me.
found her. Yeah, I,
That would
I,
be
I'm
awkward.
sorry. I clicked on your name by mistake because I saw that you were
It's all right,
open.
Hassan. Thank you for
Sorry,
being there for
my
us.
bad. Thank you.
So Chris talked about the understanding the culture of the school, understanding the culture of the community, being out about stepping on the wrong toes. Those are kinds of things that we work with our student teachers to understand about how to negotiate relationships. So, thinking about appropriate placements too, like for special education and such, and then about alignment between the philosophy of our program and the kinds of placement cultures around teaching that happen. And that was one of the thick topics that happen again and again. So this is one example of a conversation we had one Friday. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to outline themes that came up in our conversations over the last 2 years. And these were the 8 major themes. Now, I want you to hold on to these. I'm going to be talking through each of them in a moment, and I'll be asking you to do something with them as I talk through each of them. So the themes were teacher agency and identity, supervision practices and feedback, navigating power and curriculum, classroom management and SEL, cultural responsiveness and equity, program structure, induction, and continuity, mentor-teacher quality and partnership, and avoiding soulless teaching. You can imagine what that one's about. So I'm going to be going over each one of these because a big portion of this session with your peers right now is you're going to be using one of these and having a collegial conversation as supervisors around one of these topics. I have questions for you and such, but but essentially this is how do we learn from each other? How do we use information and strengths and knowledge from our own context to do our work better? So hold on to these. As I talk through each one in the chat, if you want to say this rings true for me, or you want to make a comment about any one of these, please do so. So I'm going to take a few minutes now to go through each one of these. And again, these are going to sound very familiar to your circumstance, the kinds of experiences you have with beginning teachers. So the first one is teacher agency and identity. So developing student-teacher agency in navigating school cultures, making instructional decisions, and advocating for themselves and students. We all know that our student teachers move into placement situations into their practica as guests of someone else in somebody else's house. How should they live in that house? How should they move around in that house? How do we help them do that kind of work? Helping candidates define their emerging teacher identity and values, especially when in conflict with the status quo or mentor practices. So one of the things I know in my own practice, student teachers come in with notions about what kind of teacher they want to be. And as supervisors, how do we honor those good things that they bring to their teaching and not push them to subsuming those because they just have to get along within a school culture or within a placement? How do we keep developing the things that matter to them to become the teacher that they want to become? And so that's the first one. Second one, supervision practices and feedback. This one's very nuts and bolts. Okay, refining supervisor practices. This came up again and again in our conversations. How to give meaningful, actionable feedback. The other one, and this was very practical for all of us, think about for your own context now how your institution or your program needs or wants checklist-driven evaluations of their progress versus the kind of developmental reflective conversations or close work, relational work we want to be doing with our student teachers. That's a tension for us always. And then Chris Maragli and I are going to be sharing with you tomorrow what AI might be, how AI might be used in doing this kind of work too. So these are the first two. I'm going to share the next two with you as well. Let's see, that was the first two. The next one. So another theme for us that came up again and again is navigating power and curriculum. So student teachers navigating power dynamics with mentor teachers. All of you have probably had the experience of mentor teachers who don't give up any room for a student teacher, or a student teacher who wants to take a little more initiative than maybe they should at the moment. And how do we as supervisors support the work to make that kind of relationship work? The one that came up again and again for me is working within or pushing against district mandated curriculum. My student teachers struggle with this all the time. They'd come to me, say, Johnny, we're being asked to teach this. It's shallow or wrong or poor. What do I do as a teacher? This is what my mentor teacher does. Who am I as a teacher to decide? What's my agency in deciding things about curriculum? That comes up for us all the time. And then another fundamental one, this will be resonate with many of you. You have things that are happening within your program, the coursework that students are teaching, the overall program philosophy about what makes for good teaching. And there may be things out in the field that are quite different. There's understandings about what teaching should be that don't line up with what the program philosophy is. And how do you work with a beginning teacher to understand the difference, how to find their place with it, how to make good teaching for themselves along the way. The fourth one, classroom management and SEL, defining effective classroom management for today's learners. Again, what are the kinds of expectations for classroom management in the field? What do we think about that within our program philosophies? Prioritizing relationships, student engagement, and student regulation over control. How do we move student teachers to those kinds of notions of what should happen in a classroom? And then again, integrating SEL and community building is foundational to management. So that's one of the themes that came up again and again. The fifth one, cultural responsiveness and equity. We had good discussions about funds of knowledge, culturally relevant pedagogy, and avoiding deficit thinking, especially. And we talked also about avoiding deficit thinking about our own student teachers as well. How do we start from an asset-based perspective on our teacher candidates? But here's the one that was more fundamental. Preparing candidates to teach equitably across diverse communities, even when that's not modeled in placements. Okay, so think about how that comes up for you in your work with your student teachers. The sixth one, program structure, induction, and continuity. This is more about how the mechanisms work within your institution. Rethinking the use and value of tools like the IDP. So the program may say, this is the tool you need to be using. You may have fundamental differences with that tool. You may think about something else that you might want to do that really focuses on the relationship you have with your student teacher, the kinds of development you want to have. And you may not want to be modeling checklist-driven interactions with a student teacher when you're trying to tell them that's probably not the best way to be teaching. Another one that came up, I've done a lot of work with this with peers, clarifying progression expectations across quarters and semesters. What does it mean for a student teacher to do what kinds of things as a beginner, at the intermediate level, at the advanced level? What do we expect of them at different times within the programs we have? And then the last one is transitioning from teacher preparation to induction. So I've given you a lot already, but I have two more. I hope that's okay. Um, so the seventh one, mentor-teacher quality and partnership. Some of us make the classroom placements, so we know lots and lots about our teacher mentors. The idea of what it is to find MTs who model reflective, student-centered practices and allow room for ST growth. What about our relationships with the mentor teachers or the cooperating teachers? How do we focus on that kind of student-centered practice? And then navigating the realities of mentor selection, school policies, and mentor ST mismatches. So I know many of you probably had the experience of, I have a student teacher and they're just with the wrong mentor, or the mentor is great, but the student teacher is not making the most of what's possible. So all of those things we think about as supervisors. And the eighth one, avoiding soulless teaching, recognizing how accountability systems can erode meaningful learning and autonomy, advocating for authentic teaching over box checking and scripted curriculum fidelity. So these are all the themes that came across our work together. You can see that they're very, very fundamental to the super. It's not just about what's the next thing we're supposed to do, checklist kind of supervision. We talked about the deep stuff together, and much, much, much appreciation to my peers who took us to those good places and asked questions that took us to those rich thoughts and ideas. So we're going to do something now. This is going to be our turn. Okay. So this next slide is a bit loaded, but I want you to pay attention to it because you're about to do the work yourself. Okay. I've chosen four of the major themes. The first one's teacher agency and identity. Second, supervision practices and feedback. Third one is navigating power and curriculum. And the fourth one is cultural responsiveness and equity. You can see there are going to be room numbers next to these. These are rooms that you're going to be going into to have a discussion. When you go to the discussion, what you will find, you'll see that there's a link up here. I'll put this in chat in just a moment. Or Hassam, could you put that in chat? I'll put it in chat. This link right up here. Hassam, if you could make that happen, that would be great.
Sure.
Thank you. Um, what you'll find when you get to this link is you'll find a worksheet that I've set out. And you can see I've set out the breakout rooms, room one, room two, room three, room four, and then a place for keeping notes and such. But I've added a couple questions to guide your discussion. Okay, you're going to choose which of these four rooms you want to go into. What I'd like is if one or two people would take notes. And if you notice, the notes that we took in our PLC always had the speaker's name, the first name, only the first name, just kind of a running record of the ideas that were going along. So if somebody within your group could take that on, that would be great. The other thing I want you to do, here's an outline here over here. Um, you want to introduce yourself and share your institution. An important thing, and this came up in our PLC more than once, is that you're not all working in the same kind of context. The kinds of work I do in my context, in my practice, because of the institution I'm in, is they're not going to be lined up with what happens with a peer. Okay, we may both care and mentor beginning teachers, but how the institution defines that will be different. So we need to take care with understanding different contexts for supervision. Have one or more people take notes on the page from the URL. Have one or two ready to share back with the larger group when we get back. And these are things that might be considered big ideas that come up, revelations or surprise ideas, supervisor moves that address the concern, and questions that remain. We're going to go for about 15 minutes or so, and I think that's about enough time. We may, unless somebody writes me and say we need more time, we can do that as well. Um, do I have any questions from anybody? You can put those in chat, or you could just ask right now before we go into this. I just want to make sure everybody's in a good place with this.
I just have a question. I added an R because I'm assuming there should be an R in
Does it
the
work?
link, but I don't know if it's gonna.
Here,
Okay,
let me put it
so
in the chat. I'm sorry, I should have
yeah,
done that
no
already.
problem.
Okay. If I misspelled something. Okay, this is going to be for everyone in the meeting. Okay. Please try that. Can I see thumbs up if people feel like they're in a good place to get going and talk with their peers? Okay, if anybody has a question or comment, wants to wait for a moment, that's fine too. Do take a moment to look at which room you'd like to be in. And Hassam, when you're ready to set out those rooms, that would be great. I may stop by just to let you know, okay? It's good to have folks back. I stopped in a couple of the rooms, heard wonderful things. Um, you were just so generous with each other. I was appreciating how generous you were in sharing the kinds of things that happen in your supervision, the context in which you're doing your work. So we have about 10 minutes or so. So what I'd like is if we could go through each of the folks here. So this is room one, teacher agency and identity. And if there's somebody from this group, just please start speaking. Tell us about one or two things that came up for you that struck you, and maybe something about just having a conversation with peers. Looking for one brave person. Something about this. And you
I
can all take a look,
I
please.
can I can go ahead and do that. Hi, I'm Martha Barrett. And there were 5 of us in our group. We were 2 of us from UC Irvine, but from other universities, so and colleges and at different institutions, but also in different roles. So it was interesting to hear how they worked and what their program was like. In terms of teacher agency, we really focused on the idea of making sure that our teachers spent some time just listening and learning. Um, and we thought a lot about what Bettina had said on focusing and humanizing the experience for our students. So allowing them an opportunity to talk to us, maybe as their supervisor, about what they're noticing, and just keeping an ongoing conversation around those kinds of ideas that come up with teacher agency. But really just, reminding them that they need to listen, they need to learn, and they need to be respectful when they're having those kinds of conversations.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. I'm going to go to the second group. This one's about supervision practices and feedback. Please take a look at what people have offered. If one of the participants would like to share some things that came up for you all.
I'll go. I'll share. Hi, my name is
Thank
Latrice
you.
Johnson. You're welcome. My name is Latrice Johnson. I am from UC Riverside, and I work from the Maine and the Palm Desert campus. Like one of my colleagues here, San Bernardino, was in the house. It was La Sierra, Notre Dame, and I believe Irvine, UC Irvine. So we discussed the feedback and some practices that were best uh, used to get the teacher candidate to understand or to reflect by asking questions, but also using time-stamped evidence. I shared using time-stamped evidence so that the teacher can see there are certain patterns of instruction, and also walking in with a goal in mind of what we're looking for and communicating that. Kathy shared finding the positive, building on what was positive, and then giving the time and the resources to ensure that not only are we showing our candidates what we are seeing, but we're helping them along and being supportive as well. And finally, one of our other supervisors, Denise, shared having a 2-column feedback form with accommodations and recommendations, and springboarding conversation from that. We also talked AI. Myself and Nilo shared that we upload the TPE and the rubrics to AI, and then we are able to generate a list or a chart that aligns with the feedback. And we always check the feedback before giving it to the candidate.
Thank you so much, Latrice.
Sure.
One thing I appreciate is that in these conversations we have like this, we learn about things we hadn't considered. Somebody has a tool somewhere. Somebody has a way of thinking about something. Somebody has a way of working with students, teachers that we might not have thought about that actually turns out to be really worthwhile for us. Thank you for that. The next one's about navigating power and curriculum. Anybody like to share this? Somebody can assume the power right now and talk about this. So as we look, you can see they talk about personalities, how to compromise, negotiate between styles, values, etc. More preferences on districts, equity issue. I'm not quite sure what that's about. Intentional about building relationships with mentor, teacher, district partners, placing students with former student teachers. That's something we like to do, is that if you want program alignment, one way to do that is you work with former students of yours as the mentors. Um, And then you have how do we guide candidates when placement curriculum or teaching experience do not align with program philosophy, ongoing communication with mentors, protected
Okay.
teaching spaces for our teacher
I
candidates.
can talk about that if you want.
Please, you'd like to?
It was just in the end, but it's what I also heard my colleagues say is through assignments. We are giving some of the power to our teacher candidates to do what they need to do for the program. So it's not the students themselves that are, are in this power dynamic with their cooperating teachers, but it's actually the program and even sometimes the state. So, for example, through the EdTPA, some of our students, even if they struggle and they hate it and whatever, but they still have the power structure changes and they have the opportunity to actually implement the teaching they think they want to do and they have learned in the programs. So what we call is protected teaching spaces. That's what we try to create for our teacher candidates so they can become a little bit proficient in the practices we hope they would take up, even if the placement is not totally conducive to this.
Thank you, Karin. I'm going to 4, and it's cultural responsiveness and equity. Would anybody like to speak to this for a moment? And then we're going to come to our closing.
I took the notes on it, and I apologize I didn't write names because we really got in more to a discussion of sorts as opposed to just a list. This one we were looking at, because this can be a little bit tricky depending upon a student's placement. So we were looking at it through the lens of a student is placed in a area that maybe isn't culturally diverse, or maybe they don't see it modeled from their mentor. So we just came up with some ideas, some strategies, and everybody participated. But the biggest one, I think Maciel, Dr. Calhoun Perez came up with, that students are young change agents. They believe in social equity. Have the student come to the mentor with like a specific theory they want to approach via instruction, some strategies they're learning, and then tying it into the TPA specifically. But we did discuss about the anxiety a student teacher has about being a guest in the classroom. You're kind of set into the protocols and whatnot of the mentor teacher. And if there's differences, one of our participants discussed being a broker or a bridge between the mentor and the student teacher. If there's any fallout, that as the field supervisor, be the one that kind of maintains the stability and adds support. And I think, can you all see all these? I think you can. But just what happens when the mentor is not responsive. And I think some of us have had that before. Just try to put it back into the TPEs that it is required that all students in the state of California must have experience or protocol strategies, whatnot, with culturally, linguistic, socioeconomically different student backgrounds. And I think all the universities have students focus on specific students within their placements, whether it's a second language learner or a special needs student. But looking at that, and then we did discuss a little bit about the shortage of mentor teachers across the board. Sometimes you're just locked in. One of our participants was a placement supervisor at the university and mentioned that if they could, they would reassign the student. And worst case, if the student was placed there, take it as a learning experience. You know, it's not what you saw, but what would you do? How could you learn from this? How would this lesson look with a different population in front of you? And just become a reflective practitioner and see who you want to be as an instructor.
Thank you so much.
Did I get that, team? Sorry about that.
I think you did really well by them, I expect. Yeah. I have one last thing for us. We're going to close. And I'd like, let's see, what do I have? We did that part. This is the last piece. What I'd like is we would, if we had more time, we'd talk about this experience altogether. But I'd like is if there are some people who have been a part of the PLC, if they want to say a couple words about their experience of it over the last couple years, and then we'll close with that. That would be a good way of closing. So any of you who've joined me in those, it would be great to hear from you at the moment. And you can just start talking. That would be great.
Okay, I'll start talking.
Please.
I've been involved with the PLC at UCI since it started, and then now with with Johnny and hosting another, and also with informal talks elsewhere when I'm on campus and happen to run into a supervisor from another institution. They are so valuable. I can't put a particular price on it, but I must say that I have learned so much from my colleagues over the years, whether they're new or whether they've been on board for a long time. And I would highly encourage people to take the opportunity to join any of the PLCs that might come up at their campus or across campus. Thank you.
Yeah. And I want to be good about your time, and I appreciate all of your participation over these last couple of years.
May I ask,
Um,
I'm sorry, Johnny, can I ask a question? Is
yes,
there a great connection that supervisors have that, because I'm not in the supervisor position, I just wanted to see, I'm a liaison actually. Is
okay.
there a connection that supervisors have that is the best way to communicate with other universities that you can, does that make sense? I don't even know if I'm making clear
Oh,
sense right
well,
now.
I'm hearing what you're saying. We should make such a thing. So we should bring this to Lisa, because this has been informal. We send out
Right.
to the people who come to STENT, we send out invitations for them to join this kind of PLC. So we might do that again. So I'm
Okay.
going to close. Do I help a little bit?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm putting this out there. We hope to put together another one this fall. So we will be inviting folks. So if you're interested in having these kind of conversations informally, say once every other week, do join us. And I want to appreciate you all for going a little bit long with me today. And I wish you all the best for the rest of the day, too. I'm here for a couple minutes if anybody wants to stick around. So thank you all very much. I appreciate you being a part of this today.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And I have dropped the links to the next two workshops in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
This is Peter Lewis. I don't know if you remember me.
I know, Peter. Yes, you've been a part. Thank you,
I just
Peter.
want to thank you because we took at Cal State San Bernardino, we took your model and we created our own PLC.
Oh, wonderful.
But with the department chair, basically said to supervisors, and I know I was involved in that with Robin, who I think might be still on the line.
I'm here.
Robin, but it was very successful. I'll give full credit to Robin because she's incredibly organized, and
Wonderful, wonderful.
But I do appreciate that you created a model, and we said, okay, we need to do this as supervisors. And over time, more and more supervisors joined us. We did it all by Zoom, and we had themes, and we plan to actually expand it even further into the fall and spring with the full support of faculty and the like. But it is mostly almost all supervisors who join us.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with me. It makes me very happy.
Yes, you did your job. Peter had the personality and the kindness that I
Yeah.
sometimes lack, but it helped my fear. I think the plan is to continue. The next year is accreditation. And my fear is, oh no, it's going to just be here, fill out this survey. And oh, here, do this report. So we will try to model the way that you have done your PLCs.
You're very kind to share that. I wish you well with it. I expect you will. You'll learn so much from each other. It's just good for us to have voices because so often as supervisors, we feel a bit isolated in the world. It's good to come together and learn from each other.
Yes.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Johnny.
Anybody else like to share or have a little conversation before you head out to the next place? Hi, Michelle.
Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate it. And looking forward to the next STENT sessions that we're going to be having this year.
Oh, good, good. That should be wonderful things. Are you at San Jose State? Where are you?
It's UCR.
At UCR, okay. Yeah, I'm going to be communicating with people about my next steps and what I'm doing with myself too. So I'll be reaching out. But so appreciated your participation. It's just a lovely group to come together. You know, it's a funny way Zoom can be so limiting, but sometimes if you do it okay and you accept what it is, you can make a little community. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Hassam, I'm going to cut out here too. So thank you for hosting.
Of course, thank you. And sorry about the problem earlier.
We got through it. There were some good conversations. We did all right.
Great. Thank you. All right. See you in the next sessions. Some of you.
Yeah, you take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.